Good afternoon. I'm Sue Fulton. I graduated West Point in 1980 with the first class to include women. I served in the Army as a signal officer in Germany before I got out as a captain because of the gay ban. I'm proud, happy, and a little teary to be in the presence of so many amazing veterans. And so grateful for our male allies, along with the women veterans here, family members, all standing with us. The Women in the Service Coalition, Inc., or WiSCi, started because we believe, and the data shows, that a diverse, inclusive force is a smarter, stronger, better force. Including smart, capable women in a unit enhances readiness. Developing women leaders and creating the conditions for their success will benefit the armed forces now and into the future. So we're here. We're here today. We're here today in support of women who have earned their places in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Space Force, and the Coast Guard. Women. Yes. On behalf of the women who have earned their places in the infantry, in the armor, in the artillery, in combat aviation, and in Ranger School. We stand here saying that unity and inclusion and fairness make our military stronger. Women make our military stronger. And we're here with some amazing people. I'm honored to introduce our first speaker, an Air Force veteran who grew up in a military family. In fact, her parents met when her father and grandfather flew P-3s in the same Navy squadron. She's an engineer, entrepreneur. There's a P-3 pilot behind me. An educator, and she's continuing her career of service in the U.S. Congress, the first woman ever to represent Pennsylvania's 6th District. Please welcome the ranking member of the House Armed Services Personnel Subcommittee, Representative Chrissy Houlahan.
Are super embarrassing, and thank you. It's really amazing and humbling, frankly, to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chrissy Houlahan, and I do proudly represent Pennsylvania's 6th District. But more importantly for today, I stand here as a veteran of the United States Air Force and as a woman who raised her hand and swore that oath and wore that uniform. We are here today, sadly, because something very deeply troubling is happening in our armed forces. It's a systematic, intentional, and harmful rollback of women's roles and recognition in our military. And we simply cannot be silent. That's right. It is literally, and people abuse this statement, but it is literally true and mission critical that we safeguard women's opportunities in the military. While the military may have been set up 250 years ago to only accommodate men, women now indeed make up 18% of our active duty forces and 22% of our National Guard and Reserve.
Yes!
Women, therefore, in our military are not insignificant. We are indeed essential.
We are.
Our all-volunteer military cannot be fully ready to face challenges of tomorrow without maintaining and indeed strengthening and, in my opinion, augmenting these numbers. Rolling back access to combat and leadership positions doesn't just hurt women, it undercuts military readiness. And here I'm going to sound like a broken record, and maybe many people who follow me will say the same thing. A RAND study did find that diverse teams across gender and race outperform homogeneous ones in both innovation and also in mission outcomes. We cannot afford to put artificial ceilings on who can lead and who can serve. So we must also protect the legacy of women who have served in uniform. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth are literally erasing the stories from public records, websites, and historical archives of women. And this simply isn't just disrespectful, it is a deliberate distortion of the truth that allows our government to be rewriting history. It is said that history is written by the winners. When we erase women, no one wins. This minimizes every woman who has served or is serving or will serve. and it minimizes, indeed, all of us. We are all losers when we erase the history of women who serve. From the earliest days of our nation to today's highest levels of military leadership, women have always served. Officially or unofficially, women have fought in wars, faced off against American enemies, and helped to shape this awesome, awesome nation. We owe it to every young girl who dreams of service to be able to ensure that history remembers every servicewoman's contribution and her sacrifices as well. We must defend military leadership, and recently we have seen decorated female leaders fired or pushed aside, not because of performance issues, but because of bias. And let me name those names. The U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield, who served as the U.S. military representative to the NATO Military Committee, fired. Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the first woman to serve as the highest ranking officer in the U.S. Navy, also let go. Lieutenant General Jennifer Short, the senior military assistant to the Secretary of Defense, no longer serving. And Admiral Linda Fagan, the very first woman to lead the United States Coast Guard, also is no longer in that position. These women weren't promoted through the ranks because of their gender. They were patriotic and they were dutiful. They were effective leaders who earned their positions through their merit and their experience and their unwavering commitment to service, just like their male counterparts did. To suggest otherwise not only undermines their accomplishments, but also devalues the standards and integrity of the very military itself that we serve. Finally, we must not allow this administration to water down sexual assault prevention and our response in our military to that.
That's right. Protect them.
We fought really, really hard for those reforms in 2015, in 2020, in 2021, and 2022 NDAAs. We've created independent prosecutorial authority for sexual assault cases in the military, and we have done the work for women and for men too, to address military sexual assault, and weakening those protections would betray the very survivors who risked everything to come forward with their stories. So as the ranking member of the HASC Military Personnel Subcommittee, which is a mouthful, I can tell you that prevention and training and survivor support aren't optional, but these are, again, mission critical. So today, let me be clear, and there will be others behind me, I will not allow the erasure of women in service.
Yes!
I will not accept the rollback of rights, roles, or recognition for those women who have served.
Right.
And I will not rest until every servicewoman is treated with dignity and equity and with respect. Thank you, everyone, for your service. Thank you, all of us, for your advocacy. And thank you for continuing this fight with me. And finally, thank you to the Women in Service Coalition, WiSCi, for organizing this very, very important event. It is timely, it is urgent, and we must come together to advocate immediately for corrective actions from this administration. I thank each of you here who is standing behind me and in defense of servicewomen in our past, our present, and our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Rep. Houlahan has to go to another commitment. We were so lucky to have you here today, ma'am. Thank you so much. Grateful. Our next speaker served as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Navy Reserve for over a decade. She began her career working as a foreign policy advisor to hero and Navy icon Senator John McCain. There's a lot of Naval Academy grads here. Serving on the House Armed Services Personnel Subcommittee and representing New Hampshire's 2nd District, please welcome Representative Maggie Goodlander.
Sue, thank you. I really want to begin. I was going to say something to Chrissy while she's here. Congresswoman Chrissy Houlahan, it may not have come up already, but today is her birthday. And I thank God every day that she was born, because I've been here in Congress for 153 days, and not that I'm counting, it's been a long year so far, but what's been so extraordinary about it is finding partners like Chrissy. And I brought a birthday present for her, the Constitution, because no one loves this document like she does, and like we all do here today. And I want to say to you, the women in the Service Coalition, WiSCi, it's my favorite acronym right now.
Perfect.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you for what you're advocating for. You know, it's important that you're here in this moment. I proudly serve on the House Armed Services Committee, on the Personnel Subcommittee, because we are in the fight of our lifetimes to protect women in the service. Past, present, and future. And I want to start with the past because I believe we are who we remember as individuals. You know, my dad, Ted, was a proud Navy veteran, and his memory is what inspired me to join the Navy myself. He said, when you love something, you fight for it. And the ultimate expression of love is to be willing to die for what you love. And that's who you are. And that's why you're my heroes.
Thank you.
The assault on the history of women in the service is unprecedented. Since 1775, women have been fighting and willing to die for the United States of America, and we will remember them. We will keep their memories alive, and that's what we're doing here today.
Yes.
And God bless you for that.
We won't forget.
We will never forget, because we are here because of them. You know, the attack on women in the service today, we see it from all angles. But what I'm going to tell you right now is you have got dedicated fighters in the United States Congress, and we will never give up.
Awesome.
We are going to fight to protect every avenue for opportunity. You know why? Because it's not only the right thing to do, it's not only consistent and at the core of what this Constitution has to say. It has made America safer. It has made us the greatest country the world has ever known. Women in the service. We've got a lot of... Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're not going back, and we're going to fight against this backward agenda. I wanted to be on the Armed Services Committee because it's a committee that still legislates, and that's not nothing these days.
Yeah.
We've got the National Defense Authorization Act, and I've got no higher priority than making sure we fill any gap that exists, and your presence here today and what you're advocating for is going to help us be better in the laws that we write and the laws that we're going to ensure are enforced, to make sure that women have got all the opportunities that our country needs and that every woman in this country, every girl, woman in this country deserves to participate and to be a part of the service that is the great legacy of our country. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here today. Thank you for what you're fighting for. We need you here and now, and I really look forward to our work together in the days ahead. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.
Appreciate you being here. And I know Rep. Goodlander has to get to a hearing too, so thank you again, ma'am. We're going to continue to hear from some extraordinary women veterans. The next speaker served as a Marine Corps combat engineer officer, leading missions overseas and supporting service members as a uniformed victim advocate. Before serving in the military, she led efforts to protect civilians in conflict zones as a human rights advocate. Currently, she is the CEO of Vet Voice Foundation, a national nonprofit that advocates for veterans and military families to actively participate in our democracy. Please welcome Marine Janessa Goldbeck.
Good afternoon. My name is Janessa Goldbeck. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and the CEO of Vet Voice Foundation, a national nonprofit that empowers veterans and military families to speak out about issues that impact our lives, our communities, and our country. I served as a combat engineer officer in the Marines, assigned to an infantry battalion, not long after combat arms roles and units were officially opened to women. I also served as a uniformed victim advocate, supporting survivors of sexual assault within the ranks. So when I talk about the experience of women in the military, I'm not speaking hypothetically, I'm speaking from experience. And I'm here today to sound the alarm. The Trump administration, and Pete Hegseth in particular, is waging a full-scale assault on military women. They're not just erasing our stories, they're dismantling the programs that keep women safe and banning our trans sisters in arms from serving at all. This isn't about readiness, it's not about effectiveness, it's about forcing the military to fit a narrow, outdated stereotype, one that belongs in a 1980s comic book, not in today's armed forces. Let me tell you a quick story. Back in 2012, the Marine Corps was still evaluating whether women should serve in infantry units. I volunteered for the Infantry Officer Course, IOC, because I truly wanted to be an infantry officer, and I believed decision makers needed to hear from women who were ready to compete for the hardest jobs in the U.S. military. At the time, no woman had passed IOC, and there were rumors, actually, that the course was made harder when women applicants applied, just to make sure no women slipped through the cracks. And even if I had passed, I wouldn't have been able to serve as an infantry officer because the job was still officially closed to women. So I spent weeks agonizing over the decision because I didn't want my presence to make the course harder for my male brothers in arms, just to prove a point. So the night before I had to decide, my platoon and I were grilling hot dogs outside of our barracks, and I finally came clean about my concerns. One of my fellow lieutenants, one of those Marines that everyone instinctively looks up to, put down his hot dog, looked at me, and he said, "Goldie, we're a team. If IOC is going to be harder because you're there, then we're all going to be harder for going through it together." Yeah. Woo! That moment shaped my path. I eventually went on to become a combat engineer, and he became an infantry officer. Years later, he was serving as an instructor in Quantico, and he called me to tell me about a young second lieutenant he was mentoring, alongside a handful of other lieutenants in preparation for IOC. She would become the first woman to earn the title of Marine Corps Infantry Officer, graduating alongside 87 of her male peers held to the exact same rigorous standards from a class that started with 131. This story isn't about me, it's about what real leadership looks like, which is why what's happening right now is so antithetical to what it means to serve and to lead. Since January, the Trump administration has launched a coordinated effort to roll back the clock on women in uniform. They've issued executive orders scrubbing military websites and archives of the history of women's service. They've dismantled the Service Women's Initiative teams that were responsible for combat-effective reforms like better-fitting body armor, parental leave, and pregnancy policies that actually strengthen unit readiness. These weren't woke distractions. These were war-fighting improvements made by warfighters. Yeah. So not only are they hurting readiness and combat effectiveness, they're also gutting sexual assault prevention efforts that keep our troops, men and women, both, by the way, safe. The Independent Review Commission delivered 82 bipartisan recommendations to address sexual assault in the ranks, and the Trump administration is ignoring all of it. They fired the senior official overseeing the Army SHARP program, they slashed the workforce dedicated to sexual assault prevention, and the message they're sending to survivors from the very top of the chain of command is, "You're on your own." How does that make our military stronger? Equal opportunity and SHARP posters are being stripped from barracks. Transgender service members who meet every standard and serve honorably are being banned outright, not because of performance, but because of who they are, and it's despicable. How does this make our military stronger? Women in the military are not political pawns. We are not distractions. We are not problems to be managed. We are warfighters, we are leaders, we are patriots, and every person who meets the standard deserves the opportunity to serve with no exceptions.
We are warriors!
So, Mr. Secretary, if you really care about lethality, stop gutting the programs that keep our people in the fight. Yeah. If you really care about merit over identity, stop using your own identity politics against us. Men and women in uniform who are currently serving do not have the ability to speak freely because of their service. But we do. And we will not be silent. We will not go back. Thank you, and Semper Fi.
Thank you. Our next speaker is a 2003 West Point graduate. She served 10 years in the U.S. Army as a communications officer, including 2 combat tours in Iraq. She co-founded Do More Together, the first official organization of Black West Point alumni, and she currently serves as Vice President of Programs at A More Perfect Union. Please welcome my dear friend and one of my heroes, Mary Tobin.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Tobin, and I start this out the way I always do. I am from the undisputed king of cities, Atlanta, Georgia, the home of sweet tea, lemon pepper wings, and the esteemed civil rights icon, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am also the child of the late Dr. Mary L. Hicks, a world-class educator and a civil rights activist. So when at the age of 17, I declared that I would no longer be attending Spelman College and that I would be choosing to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point, my mother brokenheartedly asked me why I changed my mind. And I told her, I know Atlanta. I know Spelman College. That's what's comfortable and familiar to me. But I wasn't trying to do what was comfortable and familiar. I was resisting that urge and wanted to do something hard. My mother then picked up her phone and called her old friend, Congressman John Lewis. I didn't know that was her old friend. And asked him if he would write me a congressional nomination to attend West Point. I was born of a civil rights activist, endorsed by a civil rights icon who resisted oppression and inequality. So one could say I was born to resist. On September 9th, 2001, my junior year at West Point, I took an oath affirming my commitment to serve as a United States Army officer. 2 days later, on 9/11, I would watch from the top of my barracks black smoke billow from just 55 miles away from West Point's campus. I was watching the Twin Towers burn. That black smoke made me afraid of what was to come, and I would soon decide again to resist the urge to quit from West Point and go into war and not home where it was safe and comfortable. And on May 31st, 2003, I graduated from West Point, and 6 months later, I found myself in Baghdad, Iraq, leading a platoon of men in a field artillery unit who were not initially so welcoming to my presence. Again, I resisted the urge to quit something that was uncommon, unfamiliar, and hard, and I worked to earn the respect of the men I was called to lead and serve. Although my time in the military was undoubtedly one of the most influential experiences of my life, I now realize that I only resisted quitting West Point, and I resisted quitting the military because I was trying to prove that I was worthy of being called an American. Brigadier General Harriet Tubman escaped from slavery, served in the Union Army during the Civil War as a nurse, a scout, and a spy, yet for years she only received a widow's pension for her husband's service and not her own. She resisted the evils of slavery. She put her life on the line in defense of this country, and for far too long, her service was omitted from the history books. Another one of my heroes, Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Early, who commanded the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion during World War II, the only all-black, all-female deployed unit overseas during the war. And I only learned of her service and her impact when I was promoted to captain in 2008 and given her book as a present. And finally, my last hero, Second Lieutenant Emily J.T. Perez, who was the first black female officer in the United States military history to die in combat and the first female graduate of West Point to die in Iraq. She volunteered for a mission and she was killed by a makeshift bomb. All of these women resisted the uncommon, the unfamiliar, and the hard things. And they not only deserve to be remembered for their service, but honored in the annals of our nation's history because they earned it.
Yes!
So today I stand here alongside the amazing women leaders of WiSCi and all these amazing giants, these women veterans behind me. A child of the resistance, a sister to West Point women, and a voice for thousands of women who have earned their right to be respected, protected, and remembered for doing what is uncommon, unfamiliar, and hard. And I implore the leaders who walk those hallowed halls every single day to resist the urge to forget the sacrifices that women service members have already made, and to remember the women who are serving right now, even while they debate our value and our worth. And most of all, I urge those leaders to remember that there's a little girl just like me in Atlanta who is volunteering to sacrifice, and if one day be called upon to give her life in service to this nation, not knowing if this nation will value her service or remember her. We will not be forgotten. Thank you.
I'm so honored to be here. Our next speaker served in the Marine Corps as a Super Cobra attack pilot. Sounds jazzy. Deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan. Among her many accomplishments, we don't have that kind of time, she served on the Department of Defense's Independent Review Commission on Military Sexual Assault. And I'm so jazzed to introduce her in her newest role as CEO of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Please welcome Kai Hunter.
Thank you all, and thank you all for being here, and most in particular to the absolute heroes that are here standing behind me. We all took an oath, and they talk about the bravery that it takes to stand up and do something like flag helicopters in combat. But I will tell you, it takes a lot more bravery to stand here right now when those in power say we shouldn't exist. And at Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, the premier voice for the post 9/11 generation of veterans, we have a saying that we like to use, which is, we've got your back. And we say that because we want you to trust us to do the work that you may not be able to do right now. And for today, that means that we have to get the back of those women who are still wearing the uniform who can't advocate for themselves.
Yes. Yes.
Every single person wearing a uniform today is a future veteran. Every single person who is considering to raise their hand to serve in uniform today is a future veteran. And we know, all of us standing here know very well, that what happens to us while we are in uniform shapes the rest of our lives.
Truth that.
In this incredibly divided atmosphere that we're in right now, veterans remain a center of unity. We remain a trusted group of individuals to carry on the root values that this country was founded on. But we cannot do that if we are broken unnecessarily because of gear that doesn't fit us. We cannot do that if we are kept awake by nightmares because we were abandoned after sexual assaults. We cannot do that if our services are erased and we are constantly having to prove that we belong having a seat at this table because someone decided that our service is somehow less than.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
We're not going back.
Make no mistake, we are not. And make no mistake that in the era of this erasure, IAVA is committed to telling your story loud. We are committed to telling your story proudly. And what they do to the least of these, what they do to the most vulnerable of these, they do to every single one of us.
That's right.
And when we say we got your back, that means we got every single one of your backs.
Yeah. Everyone.
I'm proud to be newly in this fight for about 48 hours at this point now. And it was an absolute honor when Sue, who was the fierce advocate when I was sitting over in that building in the Legislative Liaison Office, we were working on the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal. We were working on the removal of the women in ground combat exclusion. So it is only fitting that she is now here at my first appearance as CEO of IAVA to say loud and proud that we have every single one of your backs and we are not going back. Thank you so much.
That was very generous, Kai. Thank you. And our last veteran speaker, other than a member of Congress, our last veteran speaker was born into a military family. She graduated from American University in 2015 and commissioned as a field artillery officer. She is deployed to Afghanistan and Somalia. She's currently at Georgetown working on her master's. Olivia represents why we're here. In 2017, she qualified for and served as a member of a cultural support team in Kandahar, attached to a combat unit. And a few years later, she graduated from the U.S. Army Ranger School. Please welcome Olivia McQuail.
Hi, good afternoon. I want to start by saying that I would rather not be here today.
I thought this debate was over, and it's disappointing to sit on the sidelines and watch as women's rights are eroded. I would also rather not be here because I don't enjoy public speaking. I have been dreading this all day, and I've had to remind myself that I have done things that are much, much harder than stand outside on a very hot day, albeit, but a beautiful day surrounded by my friends. Those things include serving as a fire support officer in a Light Infantry Brigade combat team, deploying as a member of the Special Operations Cultural Support Team to southern Afghanistan, and graduating Ranger School. When I found out that I would have the opportunity to speak today, I tried to solidify my main arguments or key points, but everything sounded so trite. Women deserve equal rights. Keep letting women do the things they've been doing. Stop erasing women's history. So I decided that I will just try to tell you my story instead. When I was in elementary school, probably 2000 or 2001, I was doing a research project on women in the military, and I couldn't find a lot of information. My dad, who was a career Army officer, had me write to the Military Women's Memorial. They responded to me with a package. It was filled with flyers and posters and postcards of notable women, and I grew up with those posters on my wall. Are you a girl with a star-spangled heart? Mine eyes have seen the glory, and this is my war too. I heard stories from my dad about Ranger School in the 80s, going to airborne school, and being an infantry platoon leader. I knew that's what I wanted to. I don't recall ever realizing that those things were close to me as a woman until I became a cadet. And then suddenly, a month before I commissioned, women started attending Ranger School. A lot happened in the interim. I branched field artillery, I went to my unit, I served as a platoon leader, a fire support officer, a fire direction officer, and then one day I got an email that said, "Do you want to deploy with a special operations unit, and do you meet these physical standards? Apply now." And I said immediately yes. And so that brings us to the standards discourse. I tried to think of standards as a kind of modern day boogeyman. No one could ever define what standards they mean when they say standards, and the standards can really be shaped to fit whatever narrative someone's trying to discuss. But the reality is clear cut. To qualify for the Cultural Support Team program, my peers and I passed a barrage of tests, physical and mental. While wearing full kit, we dragged a 185-pound Skedco, climbed caving ladders, scaled 8-foot walls. We ran more 5-mile runs and rucked more 12-mile courses than I can remember. We did push-ups and pull-ups and kit runs. We practiced fast rope insertion, did stress shoots, and practiced responding to medical emergencies. We integrated with the special operations units that we would be supporting downrange and started building trust and cohesion early on. That comprehensive methodology and early integration is what made the CST program uniquely effective. And this concept isn't unique to the CST program. No attachment or enabler can be effective if they are treated as a bolted-on afterthought. Efficiency, lethality, and combat effectiveness depend on integration early and often.
Yes.
There's a kind of disinformation campaign circulating that women want lower standards, and that lower standards are the only reason women have achieved certain milestones.
Negative.
This is patently false. More than 300 women have attempted Ranger School. I went 5 years after the first 2 women graduated, and people always ask me, what was it like as a woman? Were you treated differently? And I can honestly say, no, I was not treated differently. By that time, the groundwork had been laid. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't even a second thought for anyone that I was there. I saw my female peers get dropped for physical events and recycle for failing patrols just like my male counterparts. I don't want people who aren't physically or tactically qualified to be in a place they don't belong because it's a danger to them and to others. And that's not what's happening. This rhetoric is a cancer that aims to divide us. I want to be very clear that that is a contrived narrative. In combat, there is no male or female. There's only survival.
That's right.
I deployed to southern Afghanistan as a first lieutenant attached to a special operations unit where we conducted nighttime raids. I was joining a highly experienced unit where most of the men were on their 3rd, 4th, or 5th combat deployments. I was worried that I would have to prove myself to these men and fight for my right to be there, but that fear could not have been further from reality. They, like most units that conducted ground operations in Afghanistan, recognized that they were failing to capitalize on 50% of the human terrain. They welcomed me with open arms. Not only was I there to fulfill a unique role for them, but I was also an extra American soldier that brought one more rifle to the fight. True to the Ranger creed, I shouldered more than my share of the task. I carried mortars, machine gun ammunition, food, water, and explosives to distribute the weight across the team. We took small arms fire while dismounted, and our helicopters were a target for rocket-propelled grenades. One time we were pinned down by such effective mortar fire that we realized the enemy must have had a forward observer who was bracketing our position. The only thing that matters in moments like that is competence and attitude. At the end of that deployment, someone asked me if I thought the CST program would go away once women became Green Berets and Ranger PLs. I said no, of course not, because there's no such thing as a female detachment commander or a female Ranger platoon leader. There are leaders who have leadership roles, and those roles are not dictated by their gender, but by their qualifications. Even if I had been assigned to support an all-female leadership team, my job would still have existed. A platoon leader, a team sergeant, their job is to lead, direct, deconflict, decide, and manage. And that's the crux of the issue. Women don't belong in combat solely to interact with other women. Although the importance and effectiveness of those programs can't be overstated. Women belong in whatever roles they're serving in. When a teammate asked me for help dragging a speedball through the desert of Helmand, did I think, I should have known a man couldn't carry his weight? No. I said, he should have let me swap you sooner. When the 19-year-old Ranger private got assigned as platoon leader in Mountain Phase, did I say, I guess you're going to fail your patrol? No, I said, I'll help you write your op order. When you put humans in the toughest situations of their lives, for example, combat, camaraderie and courage win the day, not politics and division. I have benefited from, and in fact am a product of, every initiative and program that is on the chopping block now. Early representation showed me that there was a place for me. Mentors guided and encouraged me to take leaps of faith. Policy changed through the hard work of incredible people working tirelessly behind the scenes, many of whom are here today. I followed in the path of women who had it 10 times worse than I did, and they paved the way for me. I was part of a trial to field female-specific body armor after years of getting open sores and scabs on my hip bones from ill-fitting gear, a Dakowitz initiative. I receive amazing care from the Women's Health Clinic at the VA and worry about my continued access to that health care. One night in 2019, I was in the middle of the woods in North Carolina, wearing a rucksack that probably weighed about 100 pounds. It was so cold that the water in my canteens had frozen solid. I had a couple hours of walking left to do that night, and I distinctly remember looking up at the night sky and just thinking, wow, I never thought that I would be here. I recognize what an honor and a privilege it was to have those experiences. I, like all of us here today, don't take that privilege lightly and feel compelled to speak out. Thank you.
Rangers lead the way.
That's it. Rangers lead the way. Our last speaker is an Iraq War veteran, voting rights attorney, union organizer, or was it voting rights attorney, union organizer? I'm rushing to get to the important piece here, which he's a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. Representing the 17th District in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, please welcome Congressman Chris Deluzio. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Olivia, that was wherever you went. That was powerful. Hell of a job. It's great to be joined by so many kick-butt veterans. I know you heard from Representatives Houlahan and Goodlander earlier, who I'm so proud to serve alongside. And Sue, thanks for the great introduction. You heard a little bit about my background. I was just with a Naval Academy classmate of mine who is still serving, who's a mom, who's a wife, who's given this country a lot. It doesn't cross my mind about how her path and my path may have been. Whatever it was, she has done the job. And that is not unique to the people here or anyone else that we've all served with. I will tell you, in my time at the Academy, in my time serving at sea, my time on the ground in Iraq, I served with men and women from every walk of life. And no one was asking on the ship whether you were a guy or a girl, you were a firefighter if something happened. No one was asking on patrol outside the wire in Iraq who the heck you were. You're going to have to do the job and carry your weight. And I think you heard some of those powerful stories today. And our military should be a place where people who are willing to serve, who are willing to raise their right hand and sign a blank check, as every veteran does, can serve with dignity. And I think we've seen so many of those core values threatened and attacked, and it's unacceptable to so many here, and me as well. I think so counter to the values of this country and the armed services is the scourge of sexual assault that affects men and women both in our service. Men and women both. Women especially. And I think no matter what this administration or Secretary Hegseth seems to think it's not a problem that we can ignore. It's not a problem that we should ignore.
Yes.
And that extends to VA facilities. Let's be clear. The last thing that should be stopping one of my sister veterans from getting care is fear of being harassed at the VA. That's a real problem, and one that the Congress has to pay attention to, and Secretary Collins and the VA has to pay attention to. And VA women's health clinics are an essential way to provide care to my fellow veterans. And I also want to be clear about threats to reproductive health care, which is health care for women. And whether that is DoD facilities, TRICARE coverage, or at the VA, that is health care for veterans and health care for service members that we have to defend. Now, that should not be such a partisan problem, but we all know that unfortunately it has become that. I've served in the past on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I serve now on the Armed Services Committee. I saw Senator Tuberville hold up promotions of some of our most senior officers because he wanted to take away health care from service members. That's unacceptable. And I think that it goes to the heart of the attacks we've seen on some of those who are wearing the uniform right now, who deserve the support of this country and this Congress. So I'm proud to lend my voice to so many powerful women today. I feel honored to be a guy to get to share this with you guys. I really do. But it speaks to the fact that there are young people who might make a decision today about whether they serve this country. And they should know, man or woman, that we stand behind that patriotic service, that there is a place in our military for you if you're willing to serve. And that's a powerful message. So thank you so much.
Or transgender, non-binary.
In 2022, 2 Army Ranger candidates were tragically killed during mountain phase training, hit by a falling tree while sheltering from a storm. The class was devastated and struggled to find their motivation to continue. By all reports, Ranger candidate Lieutenant Rachel Kicklighter stepped up and pulled the class together. She reminded them of their purpose and helped them drive on. The Distinguished Honor Graduate at Ranger School is selected by their peers, and that class picked Rachel Kicklighter. For all the talk of push-ups, yeets, and 12-mile rucks, the most important quality of a soldier or a service member is grit.
Yes. Yes.
Kicklighter has it. She used it to lead soldiers. The women you've heard speak today, Mary Tobin and her heroes, have it. Janessa Goldbeck, Kai Hunter, Olivia McQuail has it in spades. All of these women behind me, and I wish you knew every one of their stories because they're amazing. They have it. We are leaving you now. We're going to be delivering several thousand letters to offices of members of Congress from veterans who couldn't be here today and a few family members to continue to say, women have earned their place, and more importantly, women make our military stronger. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you to my teammates.
Not going back.
Not going back.
Not going back.
Thank you.